We did some poetry last time. I want to do what we call adab literature. Adab in Arabic actually means manners and mores. That's how you behave. Why it's called adab is hard to say, except it teaches people how to behave, probably in a social situation. Maybe that's why it was called adab. But in the end, it became what passes for prose. And as I think I told you, the first real work of prose in the Arabic language was this work by Ibn al-Muqaffa. He was a convert from a Persian background, and most of this kind of work was done by Persian converts, actually, both in the grammarian and other areas of activity. Let me see, I think I have actual find in my bag of tricks here. I think I have here some of my annotated versions of these things in these books here. I think we have some adab literature. I hope I probably didn't even put it in the collection. Under this section called Wisdom from the East in Arberry, where he talks about the lion and the ox here. And what these are kind of animal tales, Walt Disney type tales, actually more like Roger Rabbit, where you've got animals mixing with people. Walt Disney was usually animals with animals. These are animals and people mixed. And, you know, in an environment of that kind, you can say things like that you wouldn't normally be able to say in straight literature. So, let's see, do I have it here in this collection here? What page of this Arberry material? This is only Arabic poetry. Probably somehow it got skipped. Did it get skipped? I hope not. I don't see it here. Is it here or isn't it here? I'm going backwards. I'm seeing time. This begins on page 165. Now, you see the material here is from later adab, Ibn Hazm in Spain, which is the Dove necklace. So there are two works of adab. In this other collection, though, I think, this Kritzeck book, he has some of the adab literature in it. I hope we got it. If we didn't, another, he's got Ibn al-Muqaffa on page 73. Let's see if I manage to get that in this collection. I think this collection leaves something to be desired. Let's see. I don't see it there. 73. Looks like this is very strange. Yes, there it is. So, this is back to front. Yeah, there's Ibn al-Muqaffa on page 73. And so here are, as he says, two stories from Ibn al-Muqaffa. And what they are sort of like stories within stories. Now this one is about the monkey and the tortoise, and I'll go through it in a moment. But before I do, now really my head is spinning here. I'm trying to find one from one and one from the other. Before I do, I want to just look at this Arberry material that I should have had in there, but I didn't. And what originally a work translated from Indian sources. So it starts with a king called Dabshalim. And I can read it from you from this Arberry material. This beginning chapters are about two intelligent and clever men. One was cast astray from the straight path by social ambition. The other, by reasoning power, has overcome the strengths by the strength of his appetite, and the light of his perception was shrouded in darkness, and so on. King Dabshalim of India spoke thus to Bidpai. That was called the Fables of Bidpai originally, chief of the Brahmins, the priests in India. Expound to me the parable of two men who love one another, but by reason of cunning slander, stirring up mischief between them, their friendship was shattered and converted to enmity. And Bidpai replied, whenever two friends are afflicted by interference of an evil rogue, inevitably they fall apart and break with each other. Among the many examples and instances of that is the story of the lion and the ox. What is that story? And Bidpai starts to tell him the story of the lion and the ox. So you get stories within stories within stories. This is on page 75 of Arberry, but I don't think you have it, because I didn't have it Xerox, so I'll just read you this myself. O my sons, the people of this world seek three goals, and do not arrive at them except they possess four qualities, very philosophical, very abstract, commentary on human relations. Three goals at which men aim are ample livelihood, high esteem among their fellows, and heavenly reward. The four conditions that are necessary for achieving these things are the acquisition of wealth. I told you this is the shopkeeper world now. By respectable means, the careful preservation of a fortune once it has been won. Keep your money. Make sure you conserve it and make it grow. The prudent expending of one's substance so as to secure a good life and satisfy one's friends and family while providing for the journey to eternity. That's always a secondary thought. And finally, the guarding of one's soul as far as possible against the various attitudes and vicissitudes that might corrupt it. So it goes on in this analysis, and as one sees, there's nothing Islamic in this book. Nothing Islamic except occasionally something to do with worry about the afterlife. But on the whole, it's encouraging people to learn how to live in this world, get along in this world, make money if you can, in fact, keep that money, help your friends, help your family, and make a good name for yourself. So it's the bourgeois ethic, really. And it isn't surprising that it was frowned on by more purist Muslims in the early days, but this was the first prose work, and I said actually the writer of it was ultimately executed. And it has a lot of, I know that some of my students like or dislike these things. It has a lot of passages in it which are so crass that it would make your jaw drop open. I mean, some of the things in it are so sort of vulgar that it's like, oh, did he really write that? Did he really say that? And it's to entertain the audience. I think Baudelaire, the French poet, said it. I have included a little bit of pornography in my work to please the gentleman of the press, as he put it. So basically, some of these things are thrown in there these are stories that are told to circles of people in courtly venues to entertain and teach at the same time, before the movies came along in the modern world. So this first story that is told is about, I think, a man who has some oxen, and what happens to them when he charges his sons to take care of these animals. The sons listen attentively to their father's advice and good counsel and recognize fully the wisdom and profit of his remarks. The eldest brother thereupon turned his attention to commerce and elected to go on a far journey, taking with him two oxen, one named Shahraba, these are obviously Hindu names, and the other Bandaba. And on the way he came to a bog in which, this is translated from the Arabic, mind you, through the Pahlavi, the Persian, into which Shahraba promptly got stuck. They managed after considerable labor to pull him out, but now the beast could not move. The merchant therefore hired a man to look after Shatrabah and care for him until he could regain his strength, when he was to bring him after him. In a day or two, however, the hired man wearied of his charge and left Shatrabah to his fate. So what happened is these merchants are going to a place, they've got 2 oxen, one falls into a bog, gets sick, they have to leave him behind. The man they paid to watch him just takes off. A typical medieval sort of business environment. Hastening forward to rejoin his master, whom he informed that the beast was done for, killed, or died. But after a little while, Shatrabah recovered, and then he's all alone, he's free, and wandered off in search of pasture. Presently he came to a broad meadow adorned with all manner of succulent grass and aromatic herbs, such as the Garden of Eden itself would have bit the finger of envy to behold, and paradise looked upon with eyes wide open in amazed stupefaction. Shatrabah approved of it heartily and stayed there for a long while, chewing the rich cuds that fortune had put his way. It was not long before he became fat and prosperous, and the insolence of ease and the intoxication of plenty overcame him. So he lowed with ever greater sprightliness. Sprightliness, lowed meaning let out sounds of contentment. Now there lived in these parts a lion, and many wild and savage beasts attended upon his command. This would be the king. The lion comported himself amongst them like some arrogant, self-opinioned tyrant. It so happened that he had never seen an ox, nor heard its bellow before. So that when Shatrabah's lowing reached his ears, he was seized by fear and panic. Not wanting the other beast to discover he was afraid, he stood his ground quietly and made no movement in any direction. Among his retinue, as we're getting into the personnel of this book, were 2 jackals. One called Kalila, the other called Dimna. I'm reminded of some cartoons when my kids were young. There were 2, I think it was 2 coyotes or something. I can't remember the cartoons that they used to have these 2 little animals in them, but they were very much like this Kalila wa Dimna, 2 jackals. One was very cunning. Dimna was more ambitious and had grander ideas. Kalila was more cunning, Dimna was more ambitious. One day Dimna said to Kalila, "What's wrong with the king, do you think?" The lion. "He sits all the time in the same spot, doesn't stir an inch. He seems to have given up hunting entirely." So Dimna is always asking, querying, looking for trouble, if you like, and Kalila is always careful, sitting in the back. He says, "What business is this of yours?" Kalila said. "Why do you question things that don't concern you? Mind your own business." So here it's teaching you how to live in a world peopled by powerful persons. So here you keep your nose out of business that doesn't concern you, lest you get into great difficulty. We're comfortable enough living here in the court of this king. We don't hobnob with monarchs. We shouldn't aspire to be honored and taken into their confidence or expect them to listen. So Kalila always gives the conservative, rational answer. "Stop your foolish chatter. If anyone presumes to meddle in matters he's not fitted for, the same thing will happen to him that happened to the monkey." So another story in a story, and Dimna says, "Well, what happened to the monkey, Kalila?" "Oh, once upon a time," said Kalila, "a monkey saw a carpenter sitting on a log of wood." Now get ready, I'm preparing you for something here, and splitting it in 2. He used 2 pegs. Each time he hammered one. He took out the other and moved it forward. Whilst he was in the middle of the job, he got up to go somewhere, and the monkey immediately squatted down on the log and sat about trying to split it. Okay, I've got to apologize for this text here, but it'll make you want to read it, unfortunately. But this is the text. It's from Arab literature. "He sat with his testicles hanging through the split already made. Then he took out the peg that was stuck in the gap before hammering the other. And the result that the 2 pieces of wood at once sprang together, and his testicles were caught fast in the log." This is what I mean. Sometimes you get things that are so shocking out of the blue here, like, that's in the literature. This is what they're reading about what happens to you if you stick your nose in places that they don't belong. And so this is the image that you get. This monkey is sitting on a log, and this is what happens to him. The pain was so terrific that he faints. So when the carpenter came back, he belabored the monkey soundly until the brute died. That's why they say carpentry is no job for monkeys. Ha 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 ha. You know. So, I see you guys are not laughing, but that's because you don't have the book in front of you. But this is an entertaining book, supposed to entertain, off color, a little bit sexual, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you see it. And it also teaches you how to behave. In other words, keep your nose out of business where it doesn't belong and you won't get into trouble. And if you don't, you might get your you-know-what cut off. So it's a pretty down-to-earth lesson, but it's not Islamic. There's nothing Islamic in it either, is there? It's just shopkeeper mentality and courtly behavior, that would be appropriate in any society. Well, this goes on like that about the king's relations with the ox and how he finally deals with the ox and so on. I'll just skip along here to another little story that's told in the middle of all these things, just to show you, give you a whiff of it. And then we'll go over to the several stories you have that we can all read together. In the middle of all these stories, Khalila and Dimna are still talking. And the one says to the other, "See what a fool and an idiot I have been. I confined my purpose to easing the lion's mind and neglected my own interest completely. I brought this ox to wait upon him, and now he's become his favorite creature." This is what transpired in the meantime. Obviously, they made friends with the king, and now the king likes the ox. "And I've been ousted from my previous position. The same thing happened to you as happened to the pious man in the story Khalila come out to try him." What story? "Well, how did it fall out with him?" said Dimna. And Khalila then relates the following story. I warn you, another off-color story, but I shall read it to you because it's funny. "A pious man once received a fine garment," plus it's a little bit about the beginning of Sufism here, about ascetics and pious people and people who are going to become Sufi mystics. "A pious man once received a fine garment as a present from a king, but a thief seeing him arrayed in such splendor desired to possess the gown himself. So he set forth this plan to go and see him. 'I want to be your companion,' he told the Sufi, the saint, the ascetic, 'so that I can learn the discipline of the mystic way. I want to join your followers.' He was accordingly admitted into the good man's confidence and treated his intended victim with the utmost respect and politeness, waiting for the opportunity to come along, that is, to get his cloak. It came, and he seized the ascetic's cloak and made off with it. The saint realized, as soon as he missed his robe, that it was this previous disciple who had stolen it, and at once he set out in pursuit." Here's the saint now running after a guy who stole his robe. The question right away is, why would a saint care about a robe? But in any case, that's going to be asked later on. On the way, he encountered a pair of mountain goats that were locked in combat, butting each other so briskly that the blood ran out of them both. This guy's used to a quiet, contemplative life. He's gone out in the world to find his cloak. First thing he meets are two animals killing each other. A fox presently arrived on the scene and began greedily lapping up the gore. Whereupon, you have to admit this is entertaining, if nothing else, and it could get you through a rainy evening if you have no channels to surf on the video or whatever. Whereupon the goat, and that's what it was for. Whereupon the goats simultaneously set upon him with their horns and poked him to death. This is the first thing he witnesses. The same night, the saint reached the city and sought a place where he might unlace his shoes. And while he came to the house, a loose woman, that is, a woman who applied a brothel, was then given there. He was given lodging there. The woman kept a number of girls engaged upon that business that she oversaw. Now, one of the girls whose beauty would have moved the very houris of paradise to envy, and before whose fair loveliness the sun in heaven fell down in worship, happened to have fallen in love with a most handsome youth, tall, well-spoken, amusing, and of fine physique. She therefore absolutely refused to let any other customer come near her. Well, this is a familiar thing from modern movies. The woman was so furious about the loss of income resulting from the girl's infatuation that she was ready to cast all shame aside. What's this to do with the Koran? Nothing. You see why this guy was executed for pornography, probably, or whatever. But this is the first work of our prose. And risk everything to mend the situation. She designed to destroy the young man, and her plans were well forward. By the night, the ascetic lodged with her. And look, it mixes people and animals. Sometimes there's animals telling stories, sometimes there's people, you can't keep them all straight. Waiting her chance, she plied the fond couple with strong drink until they were both tipsy and staggered off dead to the world. When they were fast asleep, the woman poured some poison into a long reed. Now this is I'm sorry about this one, it's coming now, I warned you of it. And laying one end by the young man's backside, she placed the other in her mouth, extending to blow the poison in. But before she could do so, the sleeping youth broke wind, and all the poison that she was going to do into him spilled back into the old lady's mouth. So she dropped stone dead on the spot. All of this, the ascetic who's not out in the world watched. He's not used to such things. The next morning, as soon as, well, this goes on like this. As soon as dawn broke, the saint delivered himself from these abominable environments and sought another lodging. There he found a shoemaker, eager to win his blessing, carried him off to his home and bade his wife take care of him, charging her to tend him well. Meanwhile, he himself departed to a friend's revel. Now the shoemaker's wife had a lover, and as soon as her husband was gone, she sent a messenger. This is not the Islamic world, you see. A barber's wife who did these errands for her, to inform her paramour that her man had been invited out and to bid him come as arranged between them. The fellow in due course came along that night, but the shoemaker also returned to find himself hanging out by the doorstep. He had already had his suspicions of him before. Now he burst into the house in a rage, thrashed his wife soundly, tied her to a pillar, after which he betook himself to bed. When all the world was hushed in slumber, the barber's wife came to the window and called softly, "Why are you keeping your lover waiting so long?" she whispered. "If you're going to come out quickly, otherwise tell him to go away." "My dear sister," the shoemaker's wife cried out, "if you have any feelings for me, please come and release me and let me tie you to the pillar in my place. I just want to apologize to my boyfriend. I'll be back at once and I'll be eternally grateful to you." The barber's wife agreed to this arrangement and pleased her and released her. Just then the shoemaker woke up and called his wife. The barber's wife was afraid to answer in case he should recognize her voice. He called several times, but she didn't utter a sound. More furious than ever, he picked up his cobbler's knife, rushed upon the woman, and slashed off her nose and stuck it in her hand. "There," he shouted, "give this to your lover with my compliments." When the shoemaker's wife returned, she found her friend with her nose cut off, and felt very sorry. These are crazy stories, you see. And felt very sorry. She begged her pardon more than once and set her free. Then she bound herself to the pillar. The barber's wife, for her part, went home with her nose in her hand. All of this the ascetic watched. The shoemaker's wife rested for a while. Then she raised her hands to heaven and began to cry in a loud voice, "King of heaven, if you know that my husband has falsely suspected me and has done me wrong, thy grace have pity on me and give me back my nose." "You wicked woman," the shoemaker said, "what words are these? You cruel brute," his wife responded. "Get up and see how God has been good to me to make amends for your savage impetuosity. As you see, my innocence has been established because God gave me back my nose and would not suffer me to be seen among people maimed and put to shame." At this the man jumped out of bed, lighted the lamp, rushed to the pillar, and he saw his wife perfectly whole, her nose right in the middle of her face. This is a very entertaining story, if nothing else. He at once begged her pardon, confessing his sin, implored her to forgive him, saying that he should never have done such a thing without clear proof, and ought never to have listened to vile slander and inflicted such suffering on his good and innocent wife. But what about the barber? Meanwhile, the barber's wife arrived home greatly distraught, and casting about in her mind how to explain her predicament to her husband and neighbors. Presently her husband woke up and called her to bring him his instruments. As he had to go to attend a respectable gentleman, she delayed some while. Then she gave him his razor, nothing else. In a rage, the barber flung the razor out into the night and sent his wife sprawling after it. These are really nice people. They treat each other with very great gentleness and affection. "My nose! My nose!" the woman screamed. This must be funny and slapstick. The barber was dumbfounded when he saw the state she was in. All the neighbors ran and rebuked him considerably. So it goes on like that. The barber was completely at a loss of what to say and could offer no explanations. The magistrate therefore passed judgment against him, sentenced him to punishment. At this the pious man, unable to contain himself longer, stood up in the court. "Look," the pious man said, "you should reflect upon this matter and deliberate well before jumping to conclusion. It wasn't the thief who took my gown. It wasn't the goats that killed the fox. It wasn't the poison that slew the bad woman. It wasn't the barber who cut off his wife's nose. We brought these calamities upon ourselves." Thereupon the magistrate removed his hand from the barber's throat and wanted some explanation. "Yes," the Sufi saint said, "if I hadn't desired to have many disciples and followers, if I hadn't been taken in by the thief's taradiddle, and let him into my house, he would never have found a chance to steal my clothes. If the fox hadn't been so greedy and had refrained from blood-sucking, the goats would never have butted him. If the bad woman hadn't plotted to poison her fellow creatures, she wouldn't have flung her precious life to the wind. That's a joke. If the cobbler's wife had been an honest woman, she wouldn't have gotten a beating. And if the barber's wife had aided and abetted her in naughtiness, she would never have had her nose chopped off. Back to the storytellers. I have quoted this instance, Kalila concluded, so that you may realize that you have brought all this misfortune upon yourself, and that you did so by being stupid enough to overlook the likely consequences of your actions. Well, it goes on like that. That is the first example of adab literature. Let me give these, I think there's two more in here which I think are really good versions of it. This one, I hope you enjoyed that little thing. I'm sorry I didn't include it in your collection. But it does give you an idea of what this, no better way, I mean, I can tell you about Ibn al-Muqaffa, but actually reading it is something else. This story you have here is really, I think, a very instructive story. You see, it always is trying to instruct you how to get by in the modern world, as it were, and how to live in a dangerous court climate. Here is the story you have on page 73. This you do have in your book. Ibn al-Muqaffa was executed in 757. Some of you who are Muslim will say, good, he deserved it. But in any case, his literature did survive, and it's taught in schools in the Islamic world today, in lower schools, as part of the literature curriculum. I don't know how they can teach it. It's so vulgar in some places, like it takes my breath away. But I guess that's part of reality. When the former story was finished, King Dabshalim commanded Bidpai to relate the story of the man, the success of whose pursuit and the fulfillment of his wishes is immediately followed by the loss of what he obtained. More stories with a moral. The philosopher replied, the acquisition of desired good is often attended with less difficulty than the means of preserving, and whoever cannot secure the possession of what he has got into his power may be compared to the tortoise in the following fable. So again, this is how to hold on to what you've got. This is how to, you couldn't have a better shopkeeper, businessman mentality, right? It's told a certain king of the monkeys, whose name was Mahir, that being very old and infirm, he was attacked by a young competitor for his crown. These monkeys are acting like monkeys, but they look like monkeys, but they behave like humans. And was overcome and obliged to take flight. So he retired, that's the last selection, 73-4. So he retired to the riverside and discovered a fig tree and climbed up into it and determined to make it his home. And as he was one day eating the fruit, a fig fell down, and the noise of it occasioned by falling into the water delighted him so much that he never ate without repeating the experiment. Okay, here's the setup. As an old monkey who lost everything, he used to be the big shot, but now he's nobody. He's been pushed out to pasture like the governor of California. And so he says it's enough for him to sit on a tree and eat a fig. But that's not enough for him, because you see the same thing. These people are never content. They always want more. That was what the previous story said. You should be content with what you have, is what this book is saying. And so he would throw the pit down, and he liked the sound of it, or sometimes he would throw a fig down and liked the sound of it hitting the water. So every time he ate, he threw a fig down and to listen to how it splashed in the water. It was innocent, right? Like the bird's nest story. And so, he thinks it's harmless. Every time he ate, he did that. But underneath the tree in the water was a tortoise. In fact, this is not a tortoise. A tortoise is a land turtle. A turtle is something that swims. A tortoise stays on the land. This is actually a turtle, not a tortoise. But he's calling it a tortoise in the art translation. It shouldn't be called a turtle. Who was below, and as often as the fig fell down, he devoured it. And he always, in many days, got a regular supply. And he thought that this monkey was actually paying attention to him, caring about him. Again, mistake of perceptions. Therefore, he desired to become acquainted with him, become a friend. In a short time, they grew up very close, and they conversed familiarly together. Now it happened, and this can happen in real life, as you can well imagine, if you think of it as people, that the tortoise stayed a long time away from his wife, and wives don't like that, and they get suspicious. who grew impatient at his absence and complained of it to one of her neighbors, saying, "Something's going on there with my husband." Her friend replied that if her husband was on the riverside, he probably had made acquaintance with the monkey, who was probably hospitably entertaining him. Then after some days, the tortoise returned to his home and found this guy's got a bad wife. And most of the women in these stories are horrific, so it's not a little bit misogynist, I think. And found his wife in a bad state of health and apparently suffering very much, and could not conceal the uneasiness with the sight of her occasion. Expressed aloud his upset. He was interrupted by her friend, who said to him, "Your wife is very ill, and you know what she needs to make her better? She needs the heart of a monkey." "Oh," the tortoise said, "this is not such an easy thing. For living as we do in the water, how can I get the heart of a monkey?" "Oh, I'll consult my friend about it." So this tortoise is actually very stupid, but it's also a way of telling you how to behave in the world. You can never trust even someone you meet. And by the way, neighbors are usually the people that cause most trouble for each other. So even a good neighbor is something you better be careful with, and you'd be wise not to enter into relations with people you don't know. That's what this is telling you, first of all, but much more. It also, I think, tells you, if you're a woman, how to survive a rape attempt. In other words, keep your eyes open and be clever and watch for your moment to escape. It tells you lots of things. And always keep your head about you is what the story also says. "I'll go ask my friend." And he went to the shore of the river, and the monkey asked in terms of great affection. They're friends. What had detained him so long? He doesn't know he's got a jealous wife at home that's angry about the situation. "The reluctance I feel to repeat my visits was owing to my being at a loss how to make you any suitable return for the kindness you have shown me." Be careful of flowery speeches. "But I beg of you to add," and this is flowery, you see, not like Arabic. "But I beg of you to add to the obligation under which you have laid me by coming and passing some days with me at my home. And as I live upon an island, and which moreover abounds in fruit, I'll take you upon my back and swim over there, the water, with you." The monkey accepted the invitation, came down from the tree, got upon the back of the tortoise. He wasn't thinking, he was not really considering the situation at all. He just, the guy invites him to his house, fine. And as they were swimming along, you see, often, suppose you've been out on a date with someone, or someone somehow got you into his car, or you suddenly realize you shouldn't be in that person's car, and you want to get out of that car if you can while you've still got your head on your shoulders. And you see, often these people give signs of what they're going to do. Because this guy really wants to kill this monkey, or his wife does. And as he was swimming along, he began to reflect on the crime which he harbored in his breast, and the shame and remorse. He hung his head, and the monkey could see these signs. "Well, what's the matter? What's the occasion of the sudden fit of sadness which has come upon you?" he said. "It occurs to me," said the tortoise, "that my wife is very ill, and I shall not therefore have it in my power to do the honors of my house in the manner I could wish." "Oh," the monkey said, "this intimation of your friendly behavior has conveyed to me your kind intentions, and that will suffice the place of all unnecessary ostentation," and so on. The tortoise felt more at ease, continued his course, but suddenly stopped a second time. See, they give signs that they've got something on their mind. Upon which the monkey was at a loss to account for the hesitation, and began to suspect something more was intended by it than it was able to discover. So he said, "Watch out for signs." But suddenly repressing every thought that he injurious to the sincerity of his friend, he said to himself, "I cannot believe that his heart has changed, that his sentiments towards me have undergone an alteration, and that he intends to do me harm, however frequent the appearances may be in the world. It's the voice," and here's the moral, "it's the voice of experience, nothing to do with the Koran, as you see, which directs the sensible man to look narrowly into the souls of those with whom he is connected by ties of affinity and friendship." This is your lesson. "By attending closely to everything that passes without them, for a wink of the eye, an expression which falls from the tongue, the motions of the body are all evidence of what is going on in the heart. And wise men have laid it down as a rule," this is the instruction, "that when anyone doubts the sincerity of a friend, he should, by unremittingly observing every part of his conduct, guard against the possibility of being deceived by him. For if his suspicions are founded, Like Bush should have watched out about that guy that they sent to Nigeria a little more carefully, and they wouldn't have all this trouble now, you see. Even if they thought he was a friendly representative, it turned out to be, a viper in disguise or whatever. For even if suspicions are found that he is repaid for the violence which they may have offered to his feelings, for the safety which they have procured him. And if they have been entertained without good grounds, he may at least congratulate himself on the measure of foresight which he possesses, which in no instance can be otherwise than serviceable to him. Very wordy, but you get the point. Watch everybody. Be careful. Be suspicious. Look for the signs of possible betrayals. This is also how to behave in court with powerful people. Anyway, having had these reflections, he said to the tortoise, "Look, why did you stop a second time and appear as if you were anxiously debating some question with yourself?" "I am upset," said the tortoise. "I am upset by the idea that you will find my house in disorder owing to the illness of my wife." "Oh," the monkey said, being generous again, "don't worry on that account, for your anxiety will be of no use, but rather look out for some medicine and food which may be of service to your wife, for a person possessing of riches cannot employ them in a better manner either than in works of charity, in time of want, or the service of women." Blah, 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 blah. Your observations of the tortoise is just really right. But the physician has told me, and here he blurts out what's on her mind, that nothing will cure my wife except the heart of a monkey. I got myself into a pickle here. The rapist is next to me in the car. He's locked the doors. How am I going to get out of this mess? I've got to use my head now. I've really got to watch for every possible chance of escape. Well, the monkey thinks to himself, he's got the message now. But he doesn't let on that he's got the message. Fool that I am, and here's another lesson from this story. Immoderate desires, which are not suited to someone of my age, now threaten me with destruction. I often have talked to myself like this now after reading the story. I see something that I shouldn't have done that I did do, and I say, "Why, you're so old, why are you bothering with this stupid thing? And look at the mess you're getting into." Immoderate desires, unsuited to my age, now threaten me with destruction, and I discover too late how true it is that the contented man passes his life in peace and security, while the covetous and ambitious live in trouble and difficulty. That's your lesson. And I have occasion at this moment, for all the resources at my disposal, to devise a means of escaping this snare into which I have fallen. So how does he do it? How's he going to escape? See, you're already into the story. Again, it's literature, it's adab, it's flowery, it's wordy, not like poetry or hadith or something like that. Totally new style, ornate, flowery prose. Then he said to the tortoise, this was quite clever, actually, in any world. "Oh, he doesn't show any sign of being upset. He doesn't show any sign of that he's worried, that he's nervous, that he's frightened. Well, why didn't you inform me of this sooner? And I would have brought my heart along with me. However, it's the practice of monkeys when anyone goes out for a visit to a friend to leave his heart at home or in the custody of his family, that he may be able to look at the wife of him who receives him under the roof and be at the same time without his heart. I don't even have my heart. Sorry, old boy." "Where is your heart then?" said the tortoise. "I left it up in the tree," answered the monkey. Of course, the tortoise is a dumb thug, but never mind. "And if you return with me thither, I'll bring it straight away to you." Oh, that was fine. The proposal was accepted. The tortoise swam back with the monkey, who, as soon as he was near enough, sprang upon the shore and immediately climbed back up in the tree. And the tortoise waited for some time for him to come down, but of course he didn't come. And they grew impatient and called out to him to take his heart and hurry and come down and see, stop detaining me. I've got to get on with my business here. "What?" said the monkey. "Do you think I'm like the ass of whom the jackal declared that he had neither heart nor ears?" "How is this?" the tortoise asked. Well, on to another story. Now the monkey is going to tell the tortoise a story about how stupid he is, and so on and so on and so on and so on. Well, I think I've given you a pretty good indication of Khalil Wadimna, don't you think? I think you get the picture. You have another section here you can read, but I think that is the first work of our prose. I rushed through it on purpose to give you a good feeling for it, but I probably will ask you to write on this when we get into the final. I want to look at another writer. The next writer that comes along, this is the 750s here. The next writer is Al-Jahiz. And I think he really is clever. He's in the 800s, maybe 850 period, something like that. He's half a century later. He's a black, an Afro-Arab, if you want to call him that. Again, he's sensitive to those subjects, blackness, negritude, Afro things, but he's an extremely good writer, and he's considered the high point of our prose. We read a little bit that material, if you remember, Ibn Qutayba as another writer of prose around the 850s, again in Baghdad. Remember, Ibn Qutayba wrote the work on poetry and told you what the nasib was? The love prelude. We had a little excerpt from it. So he was writing prose, not hadith, not poetry, but prose. And here is Al-Jahiz, the essayist. Let me read the second one. Well, there's three here. There's flies and mosquitoes. There's about two ascetics in Ahwaz, and there's about being Arab. From two different works, and all of these are really clever works. They're page 91 to 95. I think you have it there, right? 91 to 95? It also gives you a short little sketch. He died in 869, okay. I don't know which I would take first. Let's take the flies and mosquitoes first and then go back to the other two. So this is really, I think this is a great essay, even from the little bit we have here. It's a very short piece. And this gives you how quickly the Arab prose really began to flourish. It's from the book called the Kitab al-Hayawan, the Book of Animals. In the fly, there are two good qualities. Well, now immediately we're taken up. Surprise. What? The fly? The fly's got good qualities? The fly's a pest. He annoys us. So already it's tongue-in-cheek. It's whimsical. It's humorous. It's lighthearted. A little of this in the Islamic world would go a long way today. A little lighthearted, whimsy, humorousness, tongue-in-cheek, sophistication, delicacy. Enough sawing people's heads off and stuff like that, you know. We don't need all that brute stuff. What we need is a little bit of culture and sophistication that used to exist. And we hope in places it still does exist before all the thugs drown it out. And we need some more Jahiz is what we need. We need some more Abbasid civilization. In The Fly, I don't know how many Muslims actually read this stuff anymore. In The Fly, there were two good qualities. Here are the two good qualities. And it's lighthearted. One of these is the easiness with which you can prevent it from causing you trouble and annoyance. That's a good quality. I can easily stop it from bothering me. That's a good quality. And it's a very, an essay about almost the most silly of things. For if any person wished to make the flies quit his house and secure himself from being troubled by them, without diminishing the amount of light in the house, here's what he has to do. He only has to shut the door, and they will hurry forth as fast as they can go, and try to outstrip each other in seeking the light and fleeing from the darkness. Because presumably, if you shut the door and everything, there's no light coming into the house. I guess the windows are closed or shuttered or whatever. And the flies like the light. Have you noticed that? I get a fly in my house. And what I do is I turn off all the lights and get him into the bathroom there with the light on, and he's buzzing around the mirror in the bathroom, and I get a magazine and I lay for him because he's driving me mad with his buzzing. He got into the screen somehow, And after about 10 or 15 minutes, he's so smart, he lands, and he knows I'm there waiting for him. He goes and comes and goes. I finally squash him in the mirror if I'm lucky, because he keeps coming back to the light. And that's true, you know. How many have noticed that about flies?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you know about flies, you'll know that they seek the light. This is a scientific treatise too, you see. This is not just a lighthearted thing. He's observation here, experimentation. Then, no sooner is the curtain let down, the door opened, than the light will return. The people of the house no longer will have flies upon them. So that's great. Look, you can get rid of them easy. It's true, you can do that. However, if there's a slit in the door when it's shut, or the two folding parts of it don't quite close together, then unfortunately, that will also serve them as a means of exit. And the flies often go out through the gap between the bottom of the door and the lintel. Thus, it's easy to get rid of them and escape from their annoyance, supposedly. Now, the mosquito is quite otherwise. And he's right there, too. For just as the fly has greater power, mischief in the light, guess what the mosquito has good power for? In the darkness. How many have been in a room and you're trying to sleep and you go, get the mosquito net on, whack your head and so. This is what he's writing about. And this is absolutely true. This is true. I mean, have you ever been bothered by mosquitoes? They drive you mad. I mean, you know, they just drive you mad. Particularly when it's dark and they smell your whatever it is, blood or whatever they're after, and they really go for you. So how do you get rid of these guys? Look, for just as the fly has greater power in the light for mischief, so the mosquito is torments and mischievous and bloodthirsty after dark. Well, we're with a modern person here, aren't we? This guy is sophisticated, charming, clever, and entertaining. Entertaining is always part. And it's not possible for people to let into their houses sufficient light to stop the activity of the mosquito. Because for these purposes, they would have to admit the beams of the sun, and there are no mosquitoes except in summer when the sun is unendurable. So we can't do this. All light that is derived from the sun, and now we get scientific, partakes of heat, and light is never devoid of heat, though heat is sometimes devoid of light. Hence, while it's easily possible to get rid of flies, it's difficult to get rid of mosquitoes. The second merit of the fly is that unless it eats the mosquitoes, which it pursues and seeks on the walls and in the corners of rooms, people would be unable to stay in their houses. Look, this is not a normal fly. Because most flies I know don't pursue mosquitoes and don't eat them on the walls. How many are aware of any flies that pursue mosquitoes and eat them? Well, I don't know any, except there are flies called dragonflies.
Yeah.
They do go after things like mosquitoes and eat them. So he's talking about a kind of a dragonfly. Something I guess the American troops in Iraq at the present time are experiencing. Bless their poor souls in that heated land. I don't think any of us would like to be undergoing some of the climate situations that they're having to face. Or the people living there for that matter. Anyway, the flies he's talking about apparently are like dragonflies. They actually do go after mosquitoes. But look at how he puts this. He puts it like an hadith. Now he's writing hadith-style literature. You see, I am informed by a trustworthy authority. That's how hadith would put things. That Muhammad, son of John, Muhammad, son of John. Could this be the real Muhammad? A parody of the real Muhammad? Yeah, I think it is. I think he's making a parody of hadith here. All those serious hadith that they collect, this is a lighthearted sort of caricature. This is a hadith about flies and mosquitoes. And of course it's a hadith of the Prophet, not the real Prophet, a prophet of Muhammad, son of John, not Muhammad, son of Abdullah. But I think it is a parody. This is very clever literature. Not religious literature, entertaining literature. How many read the New Yorker magazine? Well, if you go to dentist's office, you'll read the New Yorker magazines. They always have them there. Very entertaining, sophisticated stories. He said one day to his acquaintance, he's not talking about serious religious matters, he's talking about these little things. Do you know know the lesson which we have learned with regard to the fly, Muhammad says. They said, no, but the fact is, he replied, that it eats mosquitoes and chases them and picks them up and destroys them. This is a parody of hadith. I'll tell you how I learned this. Formerly, when I wanted to take the siesta, I used to give orders that the flies should be cleared out and the curtain drawn and the door shut an hour before noon. On the disappearance of the flies, the mosquitoes would collect in the house and completely overpower and bite me violently as soon as I came to rest. Now, another day, I came in and found the room open and the curtain up. And when I lay down to sleep, there were no mosquitoes, and I slept soundly, although I was very angry with the servants. Next day, they cleared out the flies and shut the door as usual, and on my coming to take the siesta, I was eaten up by a multitude of mosquitoes. Then on another day, they forgot to shut the door, and when I perceived that it was open, I reviled them. However, when I came for the siesta, I did not find a single mosquito, and I said to myself, Fakir, the conclusion of the hadith. Methinks I have slept on the 2 days in which my precautions were neglected and have been hindered from sleeping whenever they were carefully observed. Why should not I try today the effect of leaving the door open? It's also experimental science here. If I sleep 3 days with the door open and suffer no noise from the mosquitoes, I shall know the right way is to have the flies and the mosquitoes together, because the flies destroy them, and that our remedy lies in keeping near to us what we used to wish to keep at a distance. I made the experiment, and now the end of the matter is that whether we desire to remove the flies or destroy the mosquitoes, we can do it with very little trouble. Lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek, entertaining, clever, and just very charming. Really very charming. Very sophisticated literature. And this is 9th century Baghdad. I don't think anything in Europe was happening like this at a similar time. Nothing in Europe was going on like this at a similar time. And very delicate as well, very delicate. Really, I can't tell you how impressive it actually is for someone who looks at comparative cultures to see what they were developing and achieving here in this in such a short time in this environment. Let's continue with Jaws, if I might, okay? I think this other one definitely is a parody of hadith, but now he's being more serious. This is from, I don't know what this is from, but it's the first one. I love this one here. This is a series of hadith, not going to the Prophet, but this is a hadith about Arabs and Arabism. That's what this is. Khurailan, son of Kharasha, said to Akhnaf, you got me? You with me? What will preserve the Arabs from decline? He replied, all will go well if they keep their swords on their shoulders and their, not turbans, their headdresses on their heads, and ride horseback and do not fall prey to a fool's sense of honor. And what is the fool's sense of honor? That's a great response here. That they regard forgiving one another as wrong. Okay, they should keep their ammunition dry, they should keep, you know, their costume, they should have their weaponry, but they should not have fools on them, they should be able to forgive each other, which is very difficult, as you may well know, in the Muslim world for Arabs to do. This is something from 8th century now, 800s. Omar, clearly the Caliph Omar, said, headdresses, turbans, are the crowns of the Arabs, because he was a pro-Arab person who wanted Arabs to stay out in the Arab world, not come into the city. An Arab of the desert was asked. These are a series of hadiths strung together. This one about Omar, the other one about whoever, Harailan, son of Harashah, and Akhnaf, an Arab of the desert, an unknown Arab, who was asked why he did not put aside his kafiyah, his headdress, I guess. And he replied, surely, a thing which contains the hearing and the sight ought to be prized. That's funny. You know how Arabs in the desert wrap themselves up in their kafiyas so you can already see their faces? And the joke is, oh, well, it's got the hearing and the sight in it, you know. I don't know if you get it, but it's really quite charming. Ali, another famous Arab hero, this one Shiite, God be well pleased with him. Jah is his Shiite, because he has blessings on Ali and no other, so he reveals himself to be Shiite sympathies anyway. I'm not sure he was a Shiite, but he has Shiite Ali sympathies. Anyway, a hadith to Ali. We've had one to Omar, the enemy of Ali, now we have one to Ali. The elegance of a man is in his headdress, bonnet. And the elegance of a woman is in her shoes. And Aknaf said, we've heard from him, let your shoes be fine. So one thing, this is like the hadith collections, one thing leads to another on the same subject. See, that's how they laid them out according to subject. This is shoes now. Okay, another hadith about shoes. Going back to Aknaf. Aknaf said, let your shoes be fine, for shoes are to men what bangles are to women, ankle bracelets are to women. Abdullah, son of Jafar, I think we're into a Abbasid there, said to his daughter, "Oh, little daughter, beware of jealousy, for it is the key to divorce. Beware of chiding, for it breeds hate. Always adorn and perfume yourself, and know that the most becoming adornment is an antimony, and the sweetest perfume is water." Well, you know, that to me, I believe that totally. People come by stinking of perfume to me, and I say, "Oh my God, it smells horrible." Someone just natural smell of water, to my mind, that is the sweetest of all perfumes. But anyway, that's just how I feel personally, and this hadith reflects me. But see, these are not hadith, legal hadith, traditions about the law, about different aspects of divorce or maintenance or prayer or so on. These are just hadith on lighthearted questions. And different Arabs are being spoken of. So I think now we have almost all the Arabs. We have the Bedouin, we have Omar of the first right-guided caliphs, we have Ali of the Shiite Alids, we have Abdullah, son of Jafar. I think Jafar was the first Abbasid caliphate. And I think we're going to have Muawiyah in a moment, the Umayyad. All the great Arabs are being represented here by Al-Jahiz al-Black. Abdullah, son of Jafar, bestowed largesse of every kind on Nusayb Abul Hajna, who made an ode in praise of him. Well, what's this ode, folks? What's that? A qasida. We just did the qasidas, the ode of praise, didn't we? A qasida. And this is how much the Arabs value poetry. Why, they asked, do you treat a fellow this, a black and a slave? Of course, this is close to John's heart, being black himself. Why do you treat him so handsomely? But Abdullah ibn Jafar, clearly a very elegant Arab, said, by God, he said, if his skin is black, yet his praise is white, and his poem is truly Arab. We don't care what his skin color is, his poem is Arab. So all this is hadith in praise of Arabism. He deserves far greater reward than he has gotten from me. All he has received was some lean saddle camel and clothes which wear out and money which will soon be spent, whereas he gave me an ode fresh and brilliant in praise that will never die. This John is really good. He gave me far more than I gave him, and that's true. Look at the next one. Muawiyah. We've got everybody here. All the great Arabs represented. Omar, Ali, Muawiyah. Jaz doesn't discriminate between any of them. By the way, remember I told you that there was some anti-Islamic feeling in the poetry collected by the Persians? Well, you could feel that in Ibn al-Muqaffa too. That was all sort of like against Islam to some extent. But now this is not anti-Islamic or pro, this is pro-Arab. Jaz is pro-Arab. Muawiyah held an assembly at Kufa to receive the oath of allegiance. We know all about Kufa and perfidious Kufa and what happened to Ali's sons there. Those who swore loyalty to him were required to abjure allegiance to Ali, son of Abu Talib. May God honor him. Jaz, as you see, is constantly showing Ali sympathies. A man of the Banu Tamim came to Muawiyah. At one time, when I first started teaching this class at Cal State Long Beach, I had a guy in my class from Saudi Arabia. His name was Tamimi. He was so happy because Tamimi means of the tribe of Tamim. And they were saying wonderful things about his tribe. He was terribly proud of the fact that here we had his tribe in the literature here from way back then. A man of the Banu Tamim came to Muawiyah who demanded that he should repudiate Ali And the man said, what do we have here? Defiance of the strong, protection of the weak. Murua here, Arab honor. O Prince of the Faithful, he replied, we will obey those of you that are living, but we will not renounce those of you that are dead. Muawiyah turned to Mughira. Is Muawiyah angry? Does he want to hurt this man? No. Now this is a man. Look after him well. He doesn't mind that he defies him because he's noble. He's noble. Now this is a man. Look after him well. All this is teaching you things at the same time as entertaining you. Okay, the rest is not as inspiring as this, but a few things here left here are probably some more that we don't have. Alf said on authority of Hassan, the feet of a son of Adam will not stir from the judgment till he be asked three things: his youth, how he wore it; his life, how he passed it; his wealth, whence he got it and what he spent it on. More hadith, but not of legal or about sunnah of the Prophet or anything. Yunus, son of Ubayd, said, I heard three sayings more wonderful than anything I've ever heard. The first was Al-Hasan, son of Abu Sinan. Nothing is easier than abstention from things lawful. If aught make thee doubt, leave it alone. The second is Ibn Sirin. I have never envied anyone anything. The third is Muwarag al-Ijli. 40 years ago I asked of God a boon which is not granted, and I have not despaired of obtaining it. They said to Muwarag, what is it? He replied, not to meddle with that which does not concern me. Ziyad, the slave of Aish, son of Abu Rabi'a, said, that's a famous poetess, I'm not afraid of being hindered from prayer. I'm more afraid of being hindered from prayer than of being denied an answer to my prayer. Some people said to Rabi'a of the tribe of Qas, yeah, that's Rabi'a, the poetess, we might speak to the men of the family, and they would purchase for thee a maidservant who would relieve you of the care of your house. By God, she said, I'm ashamed to beg aught of this world from him who is the Lord of it all. How then should I beg it from one who is not the Lord of it all? A certain ascetic said, your dwellings are before you, your life is after you. And Samuel, son of Adiah the Jew, said in the verse, being dead I was created, and before that I was not anything that dies, but I died when I came to life. Now we're getting into mysticism, Sufi mysticism here, which we're going to take up in the next period. Notice that there's Jewish Arabs, if you like, who are equally to all the others. These are all, now we're getting into more spiritual things. And Hassan al-Basri is a famous an intellectual in Baghdad in the 800s. Hassan, son of Dinar, said, I saw Hassan al-Basri saw a man in the death struggle. Surely, he exclaimed, the thing which this is the end ought not to be desired at the first, and ought to be feared at the last. Clever sayings by Arabs about important things, but the first part is sayings about Arabs and Arabism. I could get on to the Sufi thing, which I will next time. I want you to read this and Ibn Hazm, but let's do this evaluation for the time being. Let's get this out of the way, shall we? Who will volunteer to do this thing for me while we're sitting here? Al, you can do it for me, huh? Pass this out. The number here is, let's see, 6009. That's what goes on your thing. The ones that are not being used, put back in so we don't have any here. Only give out the ones for people who are here, and then the ones that are not being used, put back in, seal it up, and make sure that all the ones that are in there go back in. Just grab one to have and grab a pencil too. Call me when you're done. Okay?
Did everybody sign the roll sheet? Still needed? No. Oh, you don't have it? Anyone else need a survey sheet? got a pencil, return it, they would like to have them available. Yeah, no, that is pretty bad.
Thank you.
I turn off my camera here, you guys.
Still going?
Yeah, I forgot to turn it off.